Hello, everyone. Welcome to Turkey Talk with the Center for Respectful Leadership. I'm Gregg Ward, Executive Director. Is it just me, or does it seem like this holiday season is a bit more intense? And with Thanksgiving just a few days away and the Christmas holidays not long after that, many of us are about to sit down to a big meal with our families. Well, at least in person or maybe virtually. And you know what? Everybody's going to have a strong opinion on this year. And we may love our family, but we don't always agree with them. And so today's expert panel discussion is our holiday gift to you. We're offering easy and effective respectful communication strategies, everything from pre-dinner prep to last dish desserts, to help you get through your holiday pain points relatively unscathed. Plus, towards the end of our chat today, we're going to be taking some questions from you, our CRL community. So if you're watching now and your holiday gathering is looming in the back of your mind, let us know in the comments. We want to help you make a plan. So I'm going to start by bringing in two of our panelists for today's discussion. We are so lucky to have two advisory council members, LaPonda Fitchpatrick and Mauricio Velasquez, with us. Thank you both for being here. Here they come. Mauricio, there you are, my friend. LaPonda,
hey.
Great to see you. Welcome aboard. How are you today?
I'm great. I am great. Looking forward to a good turkey dinner.
I'm with you, Greg. I'm in a good space when I'm with you, buddy.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best. Now, both of you have worked for a long time in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and you are experts when it comes to helping people learn how to work together. So I'm wondering if you're both sensing that there's a little more stress going on right now this holiday season. And LaPonda, I'm going to come to you. What do you think's going on out there that could put our Thanksgiving dinner at risk?
Well, first of all, hello, Greg and Mauricio. Yes, Mauricio and I go back quite a few years in this space. Based on some conversations that I have had with my own family concerning where we are today, I know that our conversations, over this holiday period will soon be fraught with good and bad food, but drama, disagreements, sadness, and of course, political polarization, whether in person or like we are today on a virtual platform. Even though we may have been raised in the same political party arena, in the same household, or even in the same family, we have begun to even parse into who supports whom or what. I just had this big conversation with one of my cousins. But as we know, respect begins at home, right? That's where it begins. That's where we learn. So we will need to find ways to navigate, through our differences. And we have to come to common ground, especially about family. That is what we will have to remember. You can't cancel family, although sometimes we want to, right? There are those few that we want to cancel.
Sometimes it's easier, Mauricio, doesn't it, to just disinvite or say, look, I'm not up to it this year, not going to come, or we're just going to have a quiet dinner at home without anybody.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier to do that. But let's say people are invited, people do come, and what's one strategy that we could do before people show up that might prevent things from getting out of control?
All right, so I actually do this. When my father passed away, I became the patriarch of my family. I'm the firstborn, I'm the oldest. So, the Christmas Eve, the Thanksgiving, all of that is our house. So I send out an email to all family members, and I say, this is our agenda. This is what we're going to have for dinner. And you're going to be on our best behavior. And I present the prefers and the nevers. Now, the prefers are behaviors and conduct that are welcome in my home. And the nevers, you can't go there. And if you go there, the floor will open and you'll be sucked out to never be seen again. So my mother, I specifically list a set of behaviors like the N-word, because my father-in-law is a racist. My mother, you can't roll your eyes. You can't make a face when my wife talks. You can't leave the room when my wife enters the room. You're in her house. she's cooking you a gourmet meal. To my father-in-law, you can't say Jewing them down, the N-word, all this stuff. So I literally list an email, this, and I call it the Ricardo Montalban approach. Remember Ricardo Montalban in Fantasy Island? Smiles, everyone, smile. So we're celebrating. I'm gonna have a fire. I chop the wood myself, the best food, and I tell them, behave like this, you are welcome to stay. You behave like this, I will. And I've kicked my mom out 3 times in the last 10 years. I've kicked my father-in-law out several times, and everybody knew. Holy cow! That wasn't just an email to read, but to live and breathe it. So I've got this. I've anticipated the drama. My mom will even say, I don't know if I can be positive. Don't even come. Your half-sister's going to be there. If you can't behave, and I've kicked her out. So I want you to know, I headed off of the pass. Email out. You have to certify you got the email, and you're going to behave. You're going to stay on the yellow brick road.
LaPonda, do you do the same thing?
Oh no, no. So you have to understand, I come from a family of preachers. Try to tell them when they're, oh yes, try to tell them. So we just focus on the fact that we're family. We can't cancel each other out. We are going to have differences of opinion. That is just the way our family rolls. So what we end up doing is we'll end up sitting playing cards or playing some other type of game. We even play charades. That keeps us from getting into some arguments there. But we know that they're always going to be a part of our history, right? We can't cancel them. You know, we're talking about cancel culture because someone said something that we don't like, or someone, God forgive, uses the N-word, right? Yeah. And you know, and that's a horrific thing. But we can't cancel our family. We have to understand that they're always going to be there, but we also know them very well. And so we have to be able to control what those buttons might be that we already know is going to set them off, because quite frankly, it sets them off every year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so with me dealing with a family full of preachers, and whether you are an ordained preacher, or some people say like me, you talk like a preacher, you know that the conversation is going to be lively. And sometimes it's going to get, just to the edge where you want to strangle someone. That's when you have to pull back from the precipice, and we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah,
how we do that.
Thank you. The advanced strategy, I think, is a good one. I have tried to do that with my wife's family, and because I'm not. Look, she's one of 10 children, and she's the only girl. And when all these boys get together, and man, are they opinionated. Nothing's going to stop them. So what we've tried to do in advance is, because her dad is truly the patriarch of the family, and, you know, he's got his issues too. He says what he feels too. She will call him up and talk to his wife, and who has very high emotional intelligence. And my wife will talk to his wife and say, you know, we don't want dad to be talking about certain things or encourage the brothers to start going down certain pathways. And so his wife will then communicate to him and say, now, before we go, you have to promise. And you know what, to tell you the truth, he listens to her. He's a smart man. And so he does follow her prescriptions, which is great. But if I were to say something to him directly, that we're off. That it's not going to happen. Because he's the patriarch. He's not twice my age, but he's many years older than me. And he's had all these kids, and he's done all these things in his life. So he's not going to have his daughter's husband telling him how to behave. That's not going to work. But if he gets it from his wife, it works.
There you go.
Well,
absolutely.
Let me add value here. LaPonda, preachers talk about love the person, hate the sin, right? Separate the person from the behavior. Exactly. So I tell all my family, I love all of you. Sometimes you say things that will demand a response from me, not a reaction, but a response. So one thing I tell people is, you can't say, I didn't mean it. We don't know what you meant. We know what came out of your mouth. You can't say, I was just kidding. That rule doesn't apply. You can't say I'm not PC. I tell people, this is in the nevers. Don't even go here. And my all-time favorite, you're being overly sensitive. You can't tell other people how to feel.
Right.
So these are part of the rules of engagement at my holiday party, right? Oh, and don't say, I don't want to talk about politics. Well, you just brought it up. That's very common in my house. I don't want to talk about, and they open the door by saying, I don't want to open this door. It infuriates me. So I tell people, you can't go there, right? I actually feel like a lifeguard at a pool with a whistle. I'm up high and I'm watching like, hey, slow down, stop running. I am constantly, and by the way, I have people in my family that are racist with selective memory. Did I say that? I don't remember. Mom, I don't care if you don't remember. I've got 11 witnesses. You're not going here. So I am just so upfront with de-escalation and minimization. It's airtight. And they know. I just look at them and point, the door is swinging. I mean, they know. And the last time I kicked out my father-in-law, I'm starving. I was just kidding. It's dark. I don't like to drive at night. I'm like, that's your problem. And more fall off the bone ribs for me, right?
Thank you very much. When you talk about that, there's something that my family, we have a mantra, and that is what's said in the mouth, from the mouth, is felt in the heart.
Oh, I love it.
And so that is my mom. She was the baby of the family, but she ran the family. And when she passed, it was left to me. Right. So I took up, and I'm the baby of my two brothers, and I'm one of the younger cousins, but they all listen to me. But when we that's the mantra. We say, now, if we're going to have these conversations, remember, what is said from the mouth is felt from the heart. So when you say this in this setting, that means you're very serious about this. And that's how you feel about me, especially if you try to start attacking me. I'm a big football fan. I love football. I can eat, sleep, drink, do whatever. And so I always say I'm the referee, and they are all in the arena. And let me tell you, I will throw that flag in a minute and throw them out.
Yeah.
So they will be, you know what?
Wow.
If the whistle goes up, you are tossed out of the game.
Wow.
But we try to keep it to that level. We know that we're passionate when we're going in. And so I think that's, sometimes it's like when we do this, when we do an evaluation of one of our clients, right? We want to know at what level they are. Well, my family's always at 9.5, hitting 12. And so we know that, but we also know there's this fine line that you cannot cross because you may not be able to come back over.
It's interesting you mentioned referee, because I grew up in a household where I always felt like I was the referee. I'm a middle child as it is. And my father was a former Marine, served in World War II, died in the wool Republican. And my mother was an East Coast liberal, like to the nth degree. So our family dinners were often fraught with conflict. And if for some reason my older brother would side usually with my dad, my younger brother would side with my mother, and I always felt like I had to referee between all these sides. And so it's funny. What I do in life is I do a lot of refereeing and a lot of mediation. I'm an umpire in baseball. So is it any wonder that I fell into this role in my life? Not at all. No surprise to me.
Not here either, because everyone is family. No matter if I meet them for the first time or this is the 10th time, everyone is family, and you have to do something to exit, to jettison yourself from my family sphere. So when I talk to you, Greg, or Mauricio, I'm talking to family. Mauricio knows some of my family. So you know what I have to go through, right, Mauricio?
Yeah.
He knows some of my family, and he knows how opinionated we are, how I'm right. And you're going to be right with me because you believe exactly like I believe. Although we know that's not the truth, right? When we get to it. But, there's this quote that, and like I said, I am one that I love anecdotes and quotes. And there's this quote, and it's from James Baldwin when he was speaking about America. And I always say it can apply to our familial and close relationships. And he stated, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. And that's why we know not to cross that line, because you still have to see me as your cousin, your aunt, I don't even worry about my kids disrespecting me because they know, like my grandma said, I brought you into this world and I can take you out. And so they know, so I don't even include them. But you have close cousins and play cousins, and you have friends and people that come over that you've known and loved for 40. And for me, I have a friend that I've known for almost 54 years. But we will get in it. But she knows that there is this area that we do not cross. Now, as Mauricio said, we have people with all different political leanings in our family. And we know that, hey, you know what? I have family members that have openly supported the current administration. Whereas I've had family members that would not vote for a Barack Obama. Right? Because they had their reasons. Okay. Right. I have family members that don't particularly care for Kamala Harris because although I'm living in Colorado and it's a beautiful snowy day here, I was born and raised in Los Angeles and they didn't like her as an attorney general of California. But you know what? But we also know that there is that line that we don't cross. Those are your opinions. I won't tell you the other thing my mother told me about opinions, but take a wild guess. I'll have to send it to you too, so you'll be able to hear it. But it has something to do with everyone has one, and it's usually not smelling too well. We put them into the opinion category. And the opinions change.
I think the famous philosopher Robespierre said, people are more convinced that their opinions are precious than they are true.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it's opinions, and opinions change like the weather, right? In Colorado, it can be 10 degrees now and 65 degrees tomorrow. So we can't take seriously someone's opinion. We must respect them and we must listen to them because we want them to listen to ours. But at the end of the day, it is your opinion.
Well, that brings up something that I wanted to ask you both. So I'll come back to you, Mauricio. People often say to me, well, you need to respect my opinion. And my response is, no, I'm sorry. If your opinion is diametrically opposed to mine, then respecting it is not something I can do. I can try to understand it. I can hear your opinion. But giving it respect is if you were to say I believe that pedophilia, for example, I know this is a crazy example. There's nothing wrong with that, and you need to respect my opinion. Hell no, I am not going to respect your opinion on that. So we have to be careful, I think, with each other when we demand or command or ask each other to respect our opinions, especially when those opinions are so diametrically opposed. So my response is often, well, I don't try to say I don't respect the opinion. I will say, I understand your opinion. I see where your perspective is. And then I leave it at that. But I'm not going to agree to respect an opinion that I don't have respect for it. Does that make sense? And Mauricio, do you do the same thing?
What I would add, in my family, we were all raised liberal, democratic. My dad was a G-man, government, immigrant. But our family's polarized. There's a split. If my dad was alive, he would probably, really get upset. But I tell people, you are entitled to your opinion. Respect is earned, right? Respect is earned. You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. That's what happens in our house is they twist the facts. They lie. And I go, look, I hear you, but you're lying right now. You're making stuff up. And I'm sorry, we're not going to go down off the yellow brick road. You're out of your swim lane and we're not going to go there. But I also want to say, we talked about umpiring and refereeing, and it sounds like all three of us do that in our own families. I'm curious how you do that, because in my house, when I witness, the high ground is respect, civility, dignity. So I tell people we got to be at minimum civil, respectful, if we can't do that, you can leave. Now, when they are exhibiting behaviors, my mother or my father-in-law or anybody, I will repeat what they say, because sometimes my mom doesn't know what's coming out of her mouth, and I'll look at my mom and go, Mom, you just asked Kelly, when is she leaving me? Mom, I'm standing right here. And then I look at my dad, and if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You got to help me with mom, because my mom likes to come over and throw grenades into the living room. Right? She likes to throw grenades. So one thing I do is I repeat what I heard. I raise my voice so everybody in my party looks. And now I've outed my mother because she'll talk in soft tones, but I hear it and I raise the voice. So everybody looks, right? And then I repeat. Everybody goes, oh my gosh. And then I go, now actions have consequences. Let's go. And it'll be a very public exit, right?
Well, one of the things, if I may add, one of the things I do is I'd rather try to avoid the escalation if possible. So one of the techniques I've learned to say is when someone pops off with their opinion about something, I start with the phrase, I think we can agree. And then I say something really generic and general. I think we can all agree that this election has been pretty contentious. Wouldn't you agree? And everybody goes, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. And then I go, how about those Dodgers? Or how about them Yankees? You know, I go right to distraction. So I get them to all to agree something really general. And then I get them to go to a different direction. And my wife now watches me across the table and she gives me the hairy eyeball. She says, you're using your techniques on my family, aren't you? And I say, you're damn right I am. Now, we've got other panelists that we want to bring on board and hear some different perspectives. So I'd like to invite Caden Manning, who's our Director of Member Services. There she is. Hi, Kaden. Welcome. Welcome aboard. And also, I'd like to invite Sarah Pugh, who's our Director of Strategic Partnerships. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Caden and Sarah, Caden, I'll start with you. So, I know you're from the great state of Vermont. And so nobody fights at the dinner table in Vermont. Is that true?
It's not true, but it's been so interesting hearing your perspectives because my family, we're very English and Irish. So definitely this level of banter is quite different around the dinner table. We have a much different dynamic. And I also, I don't have kind of the position in my family to tell people, okay, you can figure yourself out now, or I'm going to need you to behave this way or not that way. So it's a little bit different, kind of around the Manning Zoom room, I suppose.
What do you do? Because you don't have that matriarchal authority. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
What do you do?
A little bit less authority. You know what I always do is I always come prepared. Sometimes you know what is going to come up, or you know what's going to be asked. And the easiest way for me to help direct the conversation and make sure that we're staying in kind of a place that everybody enjoys is to drive the conversation. So I'll say, okay, I have a documentary I'm pretty passionate about right now, or I just read this awesome book. Or you know what? I have listed out 20 questions that I want to ask my extended family so I can get caught up on what they've been doing this past year. And basically any way that I can be steering the ship so that those problematic topics don't come in, that is the way that I come. I'm in charge of this conversation, and I'm going to make sure that we steer clear.
Good for you. Good for you. I want to acknowledge Cindy Burnham, one of our dear colleagues and friends, also an advisory council member. She just commented, I use those techniques on my family and everyone else. Sometimes it works. Good for you, Cindy. And I think we all agree. I think we can all agree that sometimes these techniques work even better on other people besides our family. Absolutely. Because sometimes our family, they're just going to be family and do what they do. Is that your experience, Sarah?
I feel like when my dad was alive, I'm with Mauricio in the whole listen, we don't see eye to eye on things. And my dad had always inappropriate racist jokes at the dinner table. Oh. And I would cringe because I was like, I predominantly went to a school where white kids were the minority. We lived really close to the projects, and we had a lot of families that came from Cambodia and Laos, and it was a very multicultural experience to grow up in that neighborhood. And after school, I would go to my friend's house where her parents would feed us sticky rice and fish sauce after school snacks, because at my house, we were getting salami and cheese crackers or whatever.
Mhm.
So I understood different languages as like first grade to fifth grade. I couldn't speak it, but I knew enough words that if my friends' parents were talking to them, I knew what they were saying. And I moved away and came back, and they were like, "What's wrong with you? You don't know anything. Like, you were gone for too long." But being like, when I would go to his house, it was like, I knew that was coming. And I would just say things like, "Dad, you can't say that." And "This is my house. I can say whatever I want." And it wouldn't just be racist jokes. It would be like I have a cousin who has bright red hair, and he's got like a list of dead redhead jokes, like a mile long, like, he just thinks he's so funny.
An equal opportunity abuser.
Oh, but he was
We
like
call those comedians.
yeah, I wouldn't say that he was on any stages ever, but he had nicknames for everybody. Like, witty banter was his thing, and it's definitely genetic, even though I didn't like get to have him as a dad in my life every day for him to rub off on me. I learned a lot about him in passing from his friends that would tell stories. And he'd say, "Oh, he had a nickname for me." And it's like so funny because I have a nickname for everyone. That's how I remember their name. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that we had that in common. So I think that behavior is passed down from his parents because it was acceptable. Like, they were a pioneer family in a really small town. They owned slaves. Like, this wasn't that long ago. This isn't like hundreds of years ago or millions of years ago. This is like not that long ago that two uncles up my tree owned slaves in our town. And it's a very public thing. And they weren't African American, they were Indians.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, listen, they come in all flavors.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. I'd like to also bring in yet another perspective. Marissa Friedman, who is our Director of Strategic Marketing. Hi, Marissa. Welcome aboard.
I came prepared with a holiday sweater for our turkey talk.
Welcome.
It's very flexible. So I have so much fun. I've been having so much fun listening to you guys, and I'm going to be a little bit of a pot stirrer. I don't know if I'm stirring a pot. Either that or it's the patch. I'm not sure which move I'm doing here. But what I'm going to tell you is, I often think that most of the times, right, I go by the theory of I'm not responsible for kind of the first thing I say or my first thought, right? Because that's kind of our reptilian brain. And so when someone says something, I kind of joke, like, Instagram is not the only thing that has filters, guys, right? When we hear something from someone, we assign so much value based on the filter of our life experience, our personal experience, our experiences at work and life and all this stuff. And I would tell you that to our detriment, sometimes we just assign all this crap to a very simple phrase or statement. And so let me kind of give you this in practice, right? On a daily basis, right? My husband might come home, we might be getting ready to go somewhere, and he'll say something like, "Oh, I had a really long day at work." And what is my response to that? I work too. I just throw up all of this stuff. Well, it's the same thing in a family dynamic, right? My parents are retired school teachers for 40 years. We have about zero constructive conversations about the state of education. We have two very different belief systems. And I always have to approach things from their speaking, from their experience, and their perspective. I am speaking as a parent in the current era of what it is like to be managing children during virtual learning, right? And we just have core discussions about, I don't criticize them. I just try to stick to facts. And facts, guys, you know as well as I do, everyone has their own version of facts, whether or not we agree, whether or not we disagree. So the goal is to come at things and say, that instinct you have to pop off is going to be there. And I try to be like, all right, that's the first instinct. I'll take a pause. I'll intentionally grab a glass of water. If you drink wine, maybe you pause and take a sip of wine or beer or an exceptionally long swig of something. And then you just like let that moment pass. And I think we can all agree, when someone has said something that's pissed you off because you're breathing faster.
Yep.
red, you instantly want to tell them how wrong they are. And I would encourage you, like, if you have such a strong reaction, it's like hearing a really bad joke, right? Some people love Dave Chappelle. Some people hate Dave Chappelle. Some people love Jerry Seinfeld. Some people hate him. How we approach that is all the filter of our experiences. And we have to give each other like a little bit of grace for resilience to determine we're not in someone's brain when they say something.
I think the challenge is that sometimes people say stuff just to do what I call poke the bear.
Exactly.
Just deliberately.
People, I notice, I see trends in who loves inflammatory moments. Like they are looking for a fight. They are looking for confrontation. Like you see them in parking lots. They're like, hey, you want to fight me? Oh, I took the parking spot. You want to go right now? And you're like, whoa, it's just a parking spot, dude. Like,
well, yeah. And I think anyone that has friends or family right now that have businesses in the state of California, I would advise not talking about business. I feel so bad for so many of my friends and colleagues that have restaurants right now because their position, no matter where they work politically, is now we hate our state. And to be fair, there's a very selfish feeling behind that, right? So what I look at is like, and I've learned this from Greg, I'm a little bit more zen than I used to be. He's teaching me a lot about being a little bit more empathetic because it's like something I feel like I'm missing chromosome wise, but it's been very helpful. like at least he gets me to pause. So I feel like that's progress. Pausing is progress.
But sometimes people say things that are so horrible, are detrimental, that whether it comes from that caveman brain we talk, that amygdala in that back, you can't take that back. And so we know that when you're with a stranger or in a meeting or a group, you can't preset them to not make those comments. Because I just face it, I've heard a lot of bad things in meetings. And especially because I'm a retired police captain. So sometimes they forget that you can't say that in a room, especially when you have male, female, and all others, right? So sometimes when you're with family, though, you do have to preset them. And you have to go back to saying, I don't respect your opinion because I think you're crazy. But I do respect you as not only a human being, but as my family. And I would hope that once we listen and we sit and we speak with each other, maybe we'll rub off on each other. Maybe the good in you and the good in me will rub off. I'm going to assume positive intent until you prove otherwise. But I'm always going to respect you as my cousin. Now, I may never speak to you again, and that's okay.
I love that LaPonda just literally made it like okay to call someone crazy. Like the way you did that was so diplomatic. I'm definitely going to rip that off and do that.
Well, you know what? But that's my opinion. So that's my opinion. I'm not offending you because I'm respecting you as a person. I just think you're crazy.
Well done.
I would add, I love you. I don't love what you're saying. I love you, but I don't love what's coming out of your mouth. And by the way, I don't give in my house. You don't get one swing, because I got small children in my house. So I disagree. My father-in-law says the N-word, and my little kids are like meerkats. They start repeating exactly what he said. So I disagree, and it's okay. In my house, you got to be respectful. You got to be civil. And I can love you, but I don't like what's coming out of your mouth. Love the person, hate the sin. I would never call someone in my family crazy. I would say that comment, now that was crazy, right? Yeah. I love you, right? You're my sister, right? I love you.
People are crazy.
Mauricio and LaPonda. LaPonda can get away with it. You can't.
Yeah. I think just add salt to the wound.
Caden, what
I think what everybody is touching on here that's so important is that sometimes when you're with family and they pop off and they say something disrespectful, it's very easy to kind of meet them at their same intention and energy right away. And so part of what you have to do going into those gatherings is kind of sit down and say, how do I want to show up when something like this happens? How am I going to express myself in a way that, like, okay, maybe I'm being met with disrespect, but I want to return respect when that happens. And I love that LaPonda has a response already prepared that she's going to use, because I think our reptilian brain is going to make us want to hit back with equal force. But if you have already thought about it and you have already practiced and you already have the words for the way that you want to respond in that moment, it's going to make all the difference in kind of taking a situation that could escalate and keeping it kind of maybe at a simmering point rather than, you know, kind of the combustion point.
And I would add to that, Kaden, that I don't know about you guys, but I have like a list of like icebreakers that I rely on. So I will intentionally say something incorrectly. So a lot of the times I'll be like, well, you know, Ohio wasn't built in a day. And immediately someone correct me. And they're like, it was Rome. And immediately that pattern interrupt process, though, a pattern interrupt like that is so
That's
important.
clever.
And you'll be like, how about the Oilers? How about that game? And people are like, dude, it's been years since the Oilers have been a team. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Clearly. But when you do those little pattern interrupts, it's like it's immediately shifting the energy into redirecting that to someone correcting you on something else that's like you're ambivalent about, right? And so when you say something like that, well, Ohio wasn't built in a day, people are like, what the hell is she talking about? Right? Yes. But then their brain is like immediate de-escalation.
That's a great technique.
Hey, Marissa, remember when I was like, so what kind of vitamins are you taking to like boost your immunity right now?
Don't ask them what they're drinking. They may want a little bit more. That's not what we talk about when the alcohol comes in the room, right?
Another one I'll do is I'll always turn back to the food and like, isn't this turkey is awesome? And I'll look right at my wife and say, everyone, isn't this turkey fantastic? Isn't she the best? And everybody go, yes, she is. And then we'll keep talking about the food. Anything we can do to kind of steer the conversation into a direction that isn't so loaded. Another one you can do is, this is a classic that I've used many times, just say, you know, gosh, what I think I'm hearing you say is that you're really frustrated about the election, right? And they'll say, well, yeah. And what I'm saying is the emotion that I'm sensing, I'm not validating what they said. I'm just saying, I'm sensing you're really upset about this, or you feel passionately about this. And psychologically, from what I understand, my psychologist friends tell me is that by validating the emotion, by telling them you sense their emotion, they will actually calm down, because like a 3-year-old, they actually feel like they've been heard.
They want to be acknowledged.
So we have a question. Can I bring this in?
Yeah.
On LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got a private message on LinkedIn, and it was asking, so this particular individual is saying, it's not so much my in-laws or parents, it's my Gen Z kids. So this is really interesting. A lot of the things that we've been talking about have been specific to adult interaction. But as you guys have seen, Gen Z is turning up in so many different ways, right? They're trolling, the existing president with buying fake tickets to things. They're putting millions of dollars of merchandise. How does that interaction change? Like, we all have, I think for the most of us, have had an experience, right? Where we've had kids. I have 2 teenagers, for example, 2 Gen Zers, right? That are very active on social media. And they were saying, how do we handle these conversations with our Gen Z kids when we have adults there in the room as well? And I thought that would be interesting to put on our hats and try and think about this, because I think a lot of parents right now are trying to figure out, hey, how do I have, we have a generation that's like super interested and super impassioned. Unfortunately, they're also only seeing things in 30-second increments, right? So my daughter will bring me a phone and she'll say, this is wrong. And we'll say, okay, well, let's go look at the whole thing. So I think that's a great question coming in from LinkedIn. And I would love to see, us try to tackle that.
Well, I give them the runway. I love what they have to say. I give them the mic, I give them the runway, and I go, that's mine. I mean, I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
So I have to change my reptilian brain, because we had a rule in my family. Until you're 16, stay out of grown folks' conversations. So that was the rule. You didn't sit and play cards with the grown folks until you were 16. But we were always around the table listening to our parents. So it wasn't that they banished us to another room. It's just that they would tell us, you don't have enough experience or knowledge to talk about this. But what we're finding today with this little thing right here, this little thing that, you know what? I call it information without experience. We have to give our children experiences now because they're getting the information, whether we try to control it or not. So we do, like Mauricio says, we have to give them the mic. But as Marissa says, we have to correct them when they have said something or seen something that is wrong, that they only saw the 30 seconds. So when we get around this table, and especially this year, where we've had these 3 pandemics, right? COVID-19, social and racial injustices coming to the surface and unrest, and then this big financial issue, like Marissa says about her friends and their restaurants and businesses. We do have to talk to our children. It's not saying, oh, you're not 16 yet, but we have to be patient with them. Yeah. And we do have to be willing to correct them. And we also, this is the opportunity to teach them how to have these conversations. Yeah. So they can go back and forth. So so it's no longer because you're 16, you can't speak. Yeah. No, we have to move you up to the dinner table and have those conversations. I think so do your homework, parents, because they're going to be asking. Do your homework.
And I think it's that context that we have to give, because I think I don't know if you've seen any of this. Seen parents be rewarded at a family gathering. Listing their parents. And
where's my switch?
And so that's a great suggestion about bringing them alongside and helping them and adding context where there is none. So they're assigning based on all the stuff that's trending, and there's no context. And so I think that's a great approach with adults as well, to be fair.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't think information, like discerning what's real and what's not real, is just for kids, because if you've watched the movie, what is it called? Social
Dilemma.
Yeah, Social Dilemma. So this is kind of like my own personal filter. When someone comes at me with a really passionate or aggressive opinion or experience, I have a filter of like their Facebook, their Google, their Instagram is different than mine. They believe those things are true because of what they're being exposed to. They haven't seen what else is out there, right? It's not even a fair fight to come to a discussion when they have a different set of experiences and context than me. And it's like, I have a little bit of like a pause, and like, I understand that's why they're so upset about something, because they don't have anything else to go off of. So it's kind of like, I don't hold it against people as much as I used to, thinking like, they're crazy. That's they're way off base. Now I'm like, oh, you believe that because that's the reality that you have been shown.
One of the things we tried to do at my table with my son when he was growing up, if he went on a rant about something that he was unhappy about, I'd say, okay, I can tell you're really unhappy about, well, what's the positive? Is there a flip side to that? And force him to look at it from another direction. Yes. Smart kid. He would come back often with like, Dad, you know this is true, and try and hit me with it. And I'd say, okay, I'll accept your perspective, but what's the flip side? And the other thing we can do is one of the rules we had is we would say, okay, we've complained now for 15 minutes. Can we please say what we're happy for, what we're thankful for, what's good in our lives? Let's be done with the complaining and let's go to the positive. So that works sometimes.
It does. And it's about, and we bring them back to games. We are a big game family. So we play cards, we play dominoes, we play Monopoly, we play charades. So we know that when it starts to get heated, and it inevitably will, we know that, we'll pull it back and let's go back to playing cards. And a lot of times we play, especially as partners, we like to do things in partners. So that you also now get your partner on your side too. So you got a little backup. They're automatically there. But these are things that, we're not going to be able to ignore. I mean, think about it. The next big topic, right, is who's going to take the vaccine and who's not. And I'm going to tell them right now, no vaccine, no at my dinner table. Keep your Zoom account. Keep it up.
I agree.
So I thought there was an interesting ingredient to why this whole political thing is like even more sharp, right? It cuts like a knife. We don't have sports right now that are bringing two parties together to be in agreement about something other than politics. So I'll give you an example. I lived in Vegas for many years, and we didn't have a sense of community. We had a lot of transient, like there isn't kids finishing school from first grade to eighth grade. They're bebopping around and teachers can't really make an impact. And it's because we didn't have any sports teams. We didn't have a sense of community of like, when you're from Iowa, listen, there's only two teams in Iowa. You're either a Cyclones fan or you're a Hawkeye. And when you meet someone from Iowa, you say, who's your team? And then you judge them, just like when you say, what part of New York do you live in? Oh, you're from Queens, or you're from Brooklyn, or you're from
Don't start. Don't start.
Hey,
Don't you say anything about my Mets, and don't you say anything about my Jets, okay? Are we clear?
We don't have sports right now bringing people together to cheer for their team, where you have two opposing political parties cheering for the same thing. They took that away from us, right?
Yeah.
So now there's only two teams. You're either red or you're blue. There's no Iowa, there's no Vegas, there's no Oakland, there's no 49ers to talk about, right? And it makes it even more heated because we're not blowing off steam doing the things that, like Marissa said, when her husband watched sports now, he's like, oh my God, did you see that play? Like, come on. He wasn't a fan like that before. But
we were on a conference call the other day, and she heard yelling. She's like, what? And I said, my son and my husband are yelling at the TV at the sports game. And she goes, are you kidding? And I said, this behavior is new. I have seen this behavior. However, I think we have to have some empathy for what we're in. Some people are anxious, some people are not. Even the small gatherings that we know are going to happen with immediate family, everyone is going to have an opinion, like LaPonda said, right? Yeah. And so our goal as a community is to help people communicate effectively, compassionately. And then when all hell else goes, we just ask, how Ohio was built in a day or whatever. But I think this conversation is really good. We're getting tons of feedback right now on Twitter with people just saying, thanks for the advice. I wasn't sure how to use that. I love like this is the stuff that we're bringing to people. And I think we need to remember not everyone has our experience or our skill set or our tools. And right now we're giving people tools for their toolbox that they can use without having to read a dissertation or go through, a 10-hour course. And I want to thank all of you guys for that, because what we're seeing is, how can we communicate effectively with our family? We love our family. They drive us crazy, right? Or we don't like our family, but we're there because it's required of us. And I don't know if any of you experience this with parents, but I walk into my parents' house, and no matter how old I am 15.
That's right.
Oh, I walk into that house, and I will be walking a platter to the sink, and my mom will say, are you going to take the stuff to the sink? And I'm like, I'm on my way to the sink. Right? Part of that is that feeling we get around when we're family. We revert to this earlier version of ourselves.
And the version that was from our youth, and the way our parents treat us, even though we're now fully grown adults, they still treat us like we were the teenagers we were. Yeah, and so we react to that.
I think, Caden, you were talking about when you went home, it's like your parents ask you, I think we were having a conversation about gas, right, Caden? And you were talking about how your mom is always worried about, like, is there gas in your gas tank? Or, like, it was something to that nature.
Yes, exactly. Actually, I'm a 30-year-old who still sits at the kids' table. So definitely this is a feeling that I'm very familiar with. Yeah, my mom doesn't like her gas tank to be any less than 3/4 of a tank full. It is a crisis moment. So, there's always going to be a different perspective and a different preference from everyone at the table. But I think, when you are kind of finding yourself reverting back into that place that you get into with your family, you really just have to stop and think, okay, who am I out there, and how can I show off who I've become to my family now that we're coming back together?
I've become the parent. Let's do this. I've become the parent, and my mom has become the child. My mom grew up teaching me, if you got nothing positive to say, don't say it. She violates her own rule constantly, right? And the other thing I do, I'll just turn. I'll say, "Are you okay?" I do that on social media when somebody's just going off. I'm like, is everything all right? Because you're coming across like a raving lunatic, but I don't say that. I'll just say, "Are you okay?" And by the way, I've taught my family, if somebody does cross the line, how about an ouch or a wow or a really? I want him or her to be pelted because the silence is deafening. The last 4 years, what people have not said has driven me absolutely mad. You got to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. So when my mom or my father, whoever is being god awful, I want somebody to go, really? I want another person to say, wow. I want another person to say, ouch. And I will repeat, you just said out. Did you know that came out of your mouth? I think it's important to be engaged, to lean in. And I also remind everybody, the reason January is the best month for counselors, psychiatrists, so it's because we all crash and burn at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we all go to our therapist in January. And you know what the therapist says? With relationships, there must be boundaries. And if a boundary is violated, there must be consequences. I am all about consequences, right? There's a reason why families are so dysfunctional. We all watch a crash and burn, and then we go, well, that was interesting. It was nice to be watching that.
You know,
instead of, get out of my house.
Yeah, but again,
I'm sorry, I missed Kaden. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was going to say, Mauricio, you have brought up something so interesting that I think sometimes, we might say something and we get that, "Are you good?" from your family. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do next? What if you aren't the peacemaker, the peacekeeper in this situation? What if you're the person who blurted out something that you wish that you could grab and just stuff back into your mouth at the dinner table?
I fall on my sword. I go,
yes.
I'll say something like, "My bad, I wasn't thinking." My wife, by the way, won't accept, "Well, I didn't mean it." Right? It comes out of my mouth. She goes, "What did you just say?" I can't say to my own wife, "Honey, it's not what I meant." I practice what I preach. So I'll just go, "Oh my God, that was really stupid of me. My bad." And then my wife will go, "No, I want to stay angry at you for a while. Go away." I'll be like, "Wait, what?" See, in my culture, we throw down and 9 seconds later, nothing happened. Kelly's culture is all about, let's bring up something that happened 17 years ago, and then let's go into a lockdown and we won't talk for 5 years. I'm sitting there going, what? I don't remember 17 hours ago, but 17 years ago, there's a lot of spite and a lot of memory. Not my culture. It's like 9 seconds later, it didn't happen. And Kelly's going, "Oh my God, were you guys fighting?" Oh, no, we're just talking loud. It's culture. It's passion, right? That's the problem in our house, is the culture clash, right? I call it the brackish water, the salt water and the fresh water mixing. That's where you really need the umpire the most.
One of the things,
Who's the fresh water, Mauricio?
one of the things you can do to apologize is go a little bit further than just, "Oops, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry." You need to say a little bit more specifically how that hurt. For example, "I'm sorry, I used that word. That was inappropriate and that hurts. I apologize." And don't ever say "if anyone was offended," because that's a weird word. And don't ever say "I said that because you said this." That ruins the apology. But if you're specific enough, "I said that and I realize now I shouldn't have said that. That was hurtful or that was inconsiderate. I'm sorry about that." And if you mean that, if it comes from a place of sincerity, that will make a difference and people will simmer down.
Yeah, don't call anybody a snowflake.
Exactly. No, please don't. And don't try to excuse what you said. And by the way, let's talk about this big old elephant in the room. Some people actually believe what they say.
Oh yeah.
And that even though they may try to apologize, when the apology is sincere.
That's right.
You know that when they're really being sincere about it. So when you do step in it, you have to admit that you stepped in it. "Oh, I stepped in it. Let me wipe that off." Because if you don't, they will remember that 17 years.
17 years.
And it's going to come up every year. Now, I'm like Mauricio. it's 9 seconds after it's said, and you try to apologize, I'm done with it. I put it in that where, well, that's another one of those things I need to be done with. Conversely, my husband is not that way, right? He may ruminate over it. So I need to make sure that I'm very clear up front. I did make a mistake. I did the wrong thing. And that's the other thing. Don't say it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. You knew it. Again, we go back to the rules at our house. What's said from the mouth is felt in the heart. So know that walking in the door. But just, you have to buy that. That's one that you're going to have to buy, take home with you, and they'll bring it up next year. Yep. And don't be upset when they do, because you made that, you did that, not anything they said.
It's also, and we're getting towards the end, and I wanted to wrap up. I wanted to add one little piece to that, if you don't mind, is that if you feel after the fact, you drive home and the people you're driving with go, you know what, that conversation, what you said would kind of made people uncomfortable. If you want to own that, and after the fact, call up your loved one, whoever the host is, whoever's house it was, and says, you know what, I just want to apologize. What I said was inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. That means something. That really helps repair the relationship. So even if it blows up at the table, you can repair it after the fact, and of course, never do it again. Does anyone else have any ideas of how to repair things after the fact?
I definitely do, because I've made a lot of mistakes. Some of you know, and some of you don't know, that I used to be quite the heavy drinker, which I am no longer. So I would have full-on conversations and arguments, and the next day be totally like, why is everybody mad at me? I don't understand, right? So the ultimate practice of resiliency is really just being able to give a full apology without, I remember telling people, hey, I overserved myself, and clearly, a lot of things came up, and I hope that doesn't damage our relationship. I have to be more mindful of what I do, how I do, when I say, and what I say. And with your help to keep me accountable to that, I hope that we continue to rebuild and repair our relationship. And when you say that to somebody, they can't be mad at you. They're like, oh, she just admitted she was wrong. She didn't blame it. She didn't excuse it. She offered a repair and it's like a full apology.
That's right.
I think if we can all look at it just from a little bit of a resilience perspective, what we're going to find is like, there's two types of people. Some people are going to be able to get over it. And some people, listen, they can't remember what they had for lunch last Tuesday, but they're going to remember a play-by-play of an argument from 12 years ago. And so you just have to love them. And sometimes you love them from afar, right? And that's to me, the ultimate is to give that full apology, or to really try and listen and really give somebody the opportunity to kind of make their own amends after the fact.
Flip it though.
Go ahead.
The person doesn't apologize. The person stands by their horrible comments. What do we do then?
It's you know the devil you're dealing with. It's then yeah. I mean, hey,
because remember,
of all walks.
Hang on, one at a time. I'm missing both of you. So,
sorry about
LaPonda, you go first.
Because remember, even though you may not agree with this person, on a particular topic, sometimes you have to assume positive intent, and maybe they just don't know. So you can do that as well. But the other thing is, they're your close family or friends, and you know a great deal about them. So what comes out of their mouth is probably not going to be unexpected. You will know that that's going to come out. But remember, that there's a lot of good in them as well. And so you do have to focus on that. So understand it's their belief. It's not yours. Right? They're not going to change your beliefs. That's their belief. You can only change what you believe. And you have to turn that around and say, well, I'm really sorry that you believe that, even if they don't apologize. Because some people are going to go like, no.
Yeah.
You have to
all right, let's go here. Let's go here.
Yeah.
So the comment is made to me, disrespecting my wife in front of my wife. I kicked my mom out, and I told my mother, I don't have a choice. If I don't kick you out, I sleep outside tonight. And actions have consequences. And she's like, I didn't mean it. I said, look, and I banned my mother from my house for 6 months. Why? People said, you can't train that wild pony. I said, yes, you can. 3 grandchildren at a time. And I denied her visiting. Right. I said, when you can respect my children's mother, you are welcome in this house. And by the way, the moment that got through to her is when I said to my mother, my 5-year-old is asking me why you hate her mother. Oh, we're off. It's a done deal. Well, again, I'm going to disagree. I pounded her into submission. I said, you're not coming here anymore. You can't say these things and expect no action, no consequence, Mom. Right. I love you, but this one was devastating. And I banned her. And I can say this, the 6 most glorious months of my life, right? My blood pressure went down. The sun was brighter. The food, the oxygen. All right. So I'm sorry. All of you snowflakes, all of you conflict avoiders, that's not my world. I go right the devil in the eye and I go, you're done. Oh, get out of my house.
And you know, I mean, I understand you can do that. I mean, I do. There's some bridges that are too far. I totally get that. I mean, I wouldn't deny you that in a minute, because if I have a best friend, love dearly, disrespected my husband. I've known her for 50 years. She has not been up to my house since 2008. Because I understand that's a bridge too far, but do I call and check on her every now and then? Absolutely. But you know, there are those bridges too far, but understand, you know, they're going to cross that bridge. You know it already. And sometimes you just don't invite them to the table.
Exactly. There you go. That's the way I am.
To the table.
I'm too old for it. Sarah, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that, gosh, we could give people so many tools on how to work on their interpersonal relationships. We could give people tools on how to work with their in-laws or their outlaws. We could give people tools on how to mend bridges at work. Maybe it's someone in your department, maybe it's someone in another department. But really what the Center for Respectful Leadership is providing is tools in your toolbox to give you permission to set boundaries, permission to have expectations for how you're treated in your relationships. And this is a skill set that you will have for the rest of your life. It affects all of your relationships at work. It affects your relationships with your spouse. It affects your relationship with your children, because your children learn by example. Your employees learn by example. And what you tolerate is a ripple effect of what happens around you. So if you think about what's happening in your office as far as productivity, I can tell you from my own experience working for Fortune 10 and Fortune 100s, how many dollars we lost because one person didn't like another person in a department that needed each other but hated each other's guts. And they were just like, I'm not doing that. Screw them. I'm mad at them. I feel like they're overpaid. I feel like they get more accolades than I get. Whatever the beef was, those little beefs turn into mountains, which cost millions of dollars every single year for businesses. And what we do is we acknowledge that it's totally fixable. It's totally preventable. And if you're looking for ways to increase productivity, increase your revenue, reduce tension, reduce reasons that people are going to HR, reduce lawsuits, then maybe you should find out what tools you have and what tools you don't have. And it's so easy. When you figure out that these little nuances are things that you're like, oh, that seemed like common sense, but it's not that common. Right? We have coursework that literally, if you're one person, solopreneur, entrepreneur, small business, enterprise business, whatever size, we have a remedy for you, for your team, for your departments, for your friend's company. So if you can think of someone that maybe has a beef at work or runs a business and needs help, we're the place to come. We have an amazing, like literally a stable of the best professionals in the business to match you with and give you those skill sets. And I invite you to go to our website, centerforrespectfulleadership.org. Check out our coursework. I invite you to communicate with us through Twitter, LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We have our own community. We want to help you nurture your business so that you have like literally articles of why the head of your housekeepers has been with your company for 22 years. why you have never had to replace people, because they love working for your company. That is not an accident. That is something that you put an effort into your relationships. And you should ask yourself, how are you praising your people right now during the holidays? What are you doing to make them feel a part of your work family? Because the amount of time that you spend at work is probably more time than you spend with your own family at home. And you should spend and invest as much effort at home as you do in your work relationships, because they help each other, right? That's how we feed our families, is we go to work and we do our best and bring home that paycheck, but everybody's blood pressure would go down. We could solve world peace if we gave everyone these tools for how to communicate. That's what the problem is. We have a hard time communicating what we're trying to do without pissing off other people and doing it in an aggressive and abrasive way. Like, there's just a better way to deliver it. So reach out.
Well said, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. And, you mentioned family. You all of you on this call are just part of our family here at the center. And we are so appreciative that you are. And we want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to it's been a blast. And you know what? We should do this again right before the Christmas holiday. What do you say?
That's right.
Let's do it again. And
I would suggest that the topic be, how do we mend sticky relationships where you have put a stopping point that I can't, right? How do we bring families? How do we bring friendships? How do we bring people back together?
I love it. I love it. That's what we'll do. I'm going to end with the words of Maya Angelou, who said, people will forget what you did and people will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Agreed.
From the Center for Respectful Leadership, wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.